I really appreciate you being here, and I know the family and the people who worked with Dan, all of his friends from all of his many activities, really appreciate this. It's a great way that we can come together, and it's sad, but it's also a positive way that we can try to affect change for our cycling community. So I have a brother-in-law, Dan's brother-in-law, Pat, is going to say a few words about Dan.
I'm blown away by the number of people here, and so we want to thank you for coming, making this a special time for Dan and his family. So I hope you don't mind, I'm going to give you a little story about Dan. He was only 53 years old when he died here on May 12, 2011. At first, it was as if we were in a bad dream. It just didn't seem like it was real. And we were hoping that we would wake up and everything would be okay. Each day since his death, we cope with the reality that Dan is no longer with us. He will not be back to this earthly home. Dan loved adventure, as all his family and friends do. Well, now he is in the ultimate adventure, and that adventure is with our Lord in heaven. And so Dan can bless us from heaven and hopefully send us some signs of some of the great adventures he's having. In our own way, each of us is trying to work through Dan's life and now his death, trying to put it in perspective. And I can't tell you how much we love Dan. As his in-law, he became like any brother to me, and I'm sure to his family, just a wonderful brother. We are so blessed to know that we have two really strong, spiritually strong families and a lot of friends. And because of all of you, we can help each other get through this and move on. And we want to use Dan's life experience to help us be better people. Dan had a very profound effect on each one of us. We loved his quiet, unassuming manner and cherished all the discussions that we had with him. We all admired how grounded, level-headed, and ethical he was. He was a gentleman. He was kind. He went out of his way to help others. We loved how he looked for his next adventure, and whenever we would talk to him about our next motorcycle trip, his eyes were the first ones that would open up, and I could already see him planning. He was the guy that we relied on to come up with itineraries for our trips, took everybody's feelings into account, and then came up with this itinerary that was wonderful. And his brothers have shared some wonderful stories with me, and I will tell you that one of the funnest things I ever did as an adult was taking a trip with Dan. He was my roommate, and we went with some of our family, and we went to the Grand Canyon, a place that I'd never been to on a motorcycle, and had one of the most wonderful religious experiences I've ever had. To see it on a bike, to see it with people you love, to see it with Dan was absolutely something that I will never forget. It'll be in my heart forever. He was a guy you'd wanted to go and have a beer with. I don't drink much beer, but I could drink beer with Dan. The other thing about Dan is that he was an incredibly sophisticated man. He was a master engineer at Honeywell, worked there for 23 years. He was also he worked for Boeing and had worked there before this for 9 years. Dan was a world-class caver. And for those of you who don't know, he was involved in much of the mapping that had occurred at Carlsbad Caverns National Park. I saw a chance to see some of his maps, and if any of you saw his maps, you saw how intricate and complicated these maps were. I mean, it's outstanding work. As sophisticated as Dan was, he really focused on simplicity. He wanted his life to be simple. He loved the simplicity of family. hanging out with family, friends, and then he was a man of routine. In fact, he was so routine that when he came home in the evening, he was always there at the same time, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "What's for dinner?" Dip said that many times.
And don't give me too many vegetables.
The one thing about Dan that I really admired was that he was never afraid to deviate from routine, especially when he was on one of his adventures. You know, dealing with Dan's death has been an absolutely horrible time for the family. I can't tell you how difficult it is from day to day just thinking about Dan and now knowing that he's not there. So it's been very difficult. Dan's injuries were too fatal. Nothing we could have done would have brought him back. We do know that Dan didn't suffer, but more importantly, we know that Dan did not die alone. He died in the hands of people who stopped, who cared enough, and just felt this profound connection with Dan and tried to help him. To those people, we don't know who they all are. We want to extend our sincere gratitude to them for all they've done. It means a lot to the family. And to know that somebody was there when Dan passed away, for us, means a tremendous amount. We also want to thank Jennifer Bunce and the Duke City Wheelman Foundation for all the work that goes into making these descansos. And they're actually sanctioned by law and protected so that they're going to be here a long time. And so every time we drive by here, we will remember Dan. And we'll remember that he loved to ride his bike and that this is where his life ended. But by creating these descansos, the foundation creates an awareness that makes us all remember that we share the road. We share the road whether we're riding a bike, whether we're riding a motorcycle, whether we're driving a car. And because we share this road together, we have to have a mutual respect for each other. By having this mutual respect, we will take care of one another. And hopefully, God willing, we will reduce the number of accidents that occur like this. So to the foundation, from the family, we want to say that we are so grateful for your help and the ability to be able to do this, because this is something that we're going to hold in our hearts forever, every time we drive by you. On behalf of the family, I want to thank all of you for coming here. This means a great deal to us, and we are so blessed that we can memorialize Dan in this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.